actually one of the things that plausibly unites people across all religions, Muslims, Jews, Christians, is that we all recognize that Rabbi Shmuley is unhinged. He's just mentally, in my view, unwell. And I don't say that as an attack. I say that as just a reality, because I've never seen someone just make things up out of thin air that were never said.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to weave out the lies so we can get to the facts. Conservative commentator Candace Owens and Rabbi Shmuley went head-to-head in an uncensored debate with Piers Morgan Wednesday evening, sparking lots of talk on social media. In the debate that was 2 years in the making, Owens and Botich discussed the Israel-Hamas war, along with the black community and anti-Semitism. Botich hurled insults at Owens, stating that she is known as Candace and Candace Owens, calling her the most anti-black and anti-Semitic person in the country.
I have spent my life bringing together the black and Jewish communities, emphasizing that we share not only a history of shared persecution, but of spiritual promise. Today we debate an American tragedy, a woman of unique eloquence who has abused that eloquence to become simultaneously the foremost anti-black rhetorician in all of the United States and the foremost anti-Semite in America. The statements that Candace has made against her own community, that they cry wolf and constantly say that they're victims of racism. Her attacks on George Floyd, a man who was suffocated to death for a $20 counterfeit note saying that he was a horrible human being. A woman who went up in front of CPAC and said, "I was never a slave in America," as if that's the only form of discrimination, is what has led her community to call her not Candace, but Clandis. The first ever female black woman who appears in her rhetoric against blacks, calling LeBron James dumb and stupid, an icon to the black community, as Clandis. Simultaneously, you have the Jewish community beginning to call her not Candace Owens, but Candace Owens, because her Goebbels-style rhetoric against Jews, that Jews are nearly all pedophiles. The State of Israel has set up a Theodor Herzl, a pedophile, as a haven for pedophiles. That Judaism is a demonic, satanic cult that only protects pedophiles.
Yeah, in normal unhinged fashion, the man literally starts the night with an opening statement constantly demeaning and dehumanizing Candace Owens almost non-stop. In his opening remarks, Botich criticized Owens' statement that she is a Christian, stating that he was the second coming of Christ, if that were true. Sounds like an insane thing to say, but moving on. In her response, Owens delivered what many social media users called an epic response. She attacked Botich's mentor, Rabbi Menachem Schneerson, who preached Jewish supremacy, using facts to back up her statements. She also said that Botich was mentally unwell. Just take a look at this ownership of a moment.
One of the things that plausibly unites people across all religions, Muslims, Jews, Christians, is that we all recognize that Rabbi Shmuley is unhinged. He's just mentally, in my view, unwell. And I don't say that as an attack. I say that as just a reality, because I've never seen someone just make things up out of thin air that were never said, and trying to screen that as a defense of black people. The black people will never accept Rabbi Shmuley after Michael Jackson put him on a list of people who he felt were ruining his life. So you can stop your pleas with Black America, they won't work. Now, going back to the context of what you've asked us to speak about today, I think one of the things that the world is recognizing, and what we've always recognized, is that there are radical fringe sects that break out within every single religion, amongst every race. There's white supremacy, there's black supremacy, there's radical Islam, there are all of these Christ cults around the world. And I think right now it's important for people to understand that radical Judaism is also a thing, and you're watching an example of it right now on your screen. The person sitting across from me, or sitting next to me, I guess, posted on his Facebook page in 2016 a tribute to someone who he said was his mentor. That was Rabbi Menachem Schneerson. He said he was his mentor and his friend. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with Rabbi Schneerson, there were some Jews who believed that he was and is the Messiah. So rejecting Christ, but believing that that rabbi was his Messiah. Now, you may remember in the news recently, there was this radicalized faction of the Lubavitch Orthodox community in Brooklyn that were digging tunnels in Brooklyn and hurling benches at police officers. Well, and by the way, this is per the Times of Israel, that faction of individuals are followers of Rabbi Schneerson. So again, you have Rabbi Shmuley who believes that that's his mentor. They believed that he was the Messiah. What is it? It becomes important to understand, what did Rabbi Schneerson preach? Well, he preached Jewish supremacism, the hatred of all non-Jews. And you don't have to take my word for it, because if I said it, they would say that's anti-Semitism. You should instead take the word of the two Jewish professors who translated his work. Those authors' names were Israel Shahak and Norton Mezvinsky, and their book was entitled Jewish Fundamentalism in Israel. From that book, we learned that Shmuley's mentor, Schneerson, describes the difference between a Jew and a non-Jew. And he says, quote, "Thus we do not have a case of profound change in which a person is merely on a superior level. The body of a Jewish person is of totally different quality from the body of all nations of the world." And he talks about the substance of the Jewish body versus the substance of non-Jews, saying that the inner quality, quote, is so different and so great that the body should be considered completely different species. So that is a belief. And you can go through his speeches and you will see that he continually talks about how non-Jews should be treated, and that, again, we are a different species. This is what Rabbi Shmuley believes in. We have to come to terms with the fact that there are Jewish radicals, and it's incumbent upon the Jewish community to call them out. I'm glad that you brought up my rhetoric about Black Lives Matter, the organization, and which was basically allowing Black criminals to take to the street to burn down, to loot, and to riot in the name of racism, because it shows that I'm on equal footing here, that across the board, I do not support supremacism, whether it's coming from my community or whether or not it is coming from yours. And I think the entire world is now paying attention and wondering what is going on in Israel. What is this government? Is this a radical fringe government? And many people are concluding that the answer to that question is yes.
At one point in the debate, Owens told Botich that she was not comfortable as a Christian, with the number of bombs dropped on Gaza and the 18,000 Palestinian children killed. In another move that social media has called epic, she quoted Revelation 3:9 here.
Prior to October 7th, I don't think many people were engaged with what is happening in Israel. You know, we kind of all said the same thing. Israel is our friend and ally. I count myself among those people. Post October 7th, the world, and especially I would say Zionists in media, were demanding that we all pay attention. And when we began to pay attention, we didn't like what we saw. You cannot tell me to ever feel comfortable with 18,000 children being ruthlessly murdered. You can't get me to feel comfortable as a Christian with the amount of more explosives dropped, tons of explosives dropped on Gaza than were dropped in Hiroshima. This doesn't make sense to me. Gaza is 30 miles long, 7 miles wide. It's incredibly dense population. And this is, by the way, according to Haaretz, that 40,000 Palestinians have been murdered. I believe they're getting those numbers from the Gaza Health Ministry. And here's what I would like to say to you, Rabbi, since you're quoting scripture, okay? The one that's relevant to me is, woe unto them that call evil good and good evil, that put darkness for light and light for darkness. And if you'd like to dive into a little more scripture, I think what's relevant is Revelation 3:9. Behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews and are not, but do lie. And I'm speaking directly to you, Rabbi Shmuley. The fact that you would try to say, I am Jewish and this is what I believe, and do and say the things that you are doing. People can see and hear evil, and what you are doing right now is an act of evil. The lies that you are telling, not just on me, but also on my family members, are a good example for the world to see what we are referring to when we call something radical Zionism.
Throughout the debate, Botich failed to answer questions about the Israel-Hamas war, prompting Morgan to keep him on topic. Most likely because he never had truth on his side to begin with. I mean, these people get trained in the art of not answering questions. They're never transparent, never honest, and constantly playing victim, and you'll see that tactic in action here in this next clip, where Piers Morgan simply slams Rabbi Shmuley for skating around his questions like a scene in Roll Bounce.
And with all due respect, Piers, you have not said that one of those things, that I'm a murderer, a man who doesn't have a speeding ticket, who doesn't have a parking ticket, is a murderer, and the police have to come and the FBI to protect me. Are you going to say...
Here's what I'm going to say to you, Rabbi Shmuley. Once again, you've just singularly failed to answer my question. So if you're just going to continue, every time I ask you a question about the war, which is the point of the debate, to just launch into Candace or her family or whatever, that's your decision. But in the interest of fairness, every time you speak for 3-4 minutes, hang on. I'm now going to let Candace respond. If you want to, Candace, look.
After the debate, Botich made several posts on X criticizing both Owens and Morgan. He said that Owens had cheated because she illegally had her laptop to reference, and that Morgan, tipping the scales in her favor, undermined his credibility as a journalist. Which is ridiculous. Shmuley asked for receipts for sources, and Candace brought them, and then he didn't want to hear them. It then became, oh, we need to fact check that. You just made this up, and blah, blah, blah. That's not true, blah, blah. He said that she could answer all of his questions by using Google and called the move deceptive. But I didn't catch that man saying one true thing all night, so why would we believe him now, right? Not so much of a debate, if you ask me. This was a beatdown, and he got beat by a girl. So bad that he ended up going into this spill about Michael Jackson completely on the defensive.
She said that I killed him, and talk about the contempt for people struggling with addiction, that she would say the Jews killed Michael Jackson.
Yeah, when you do some research on what happened with Michael Jackson, it all leads back to these people who wear the small hats, but I'll just leave that there because the powers that be don't like when you point them out. If you want to know who rules over you, just look at who you're not allowed to criticize. Because, just in case you haven't heard, Candace Owens' YouTube has been suspended. I wonder why.
Was going to say exactly what you said, Piers. Like, Dresden was considered a Holocaust. It was, in fact, a war crime. And there should be debates about what happened in Dresden. It was absolutely horrific that a bunch of Christians were skipping off, on the eve of Ash Wednesday. And then they were quite literally reduced to ashes. It is wrong. And the fact that you are having to reference a war crime to justify what's happening in Gaza is not a point for you. It's completely awful. When people say, oh, well, look at what we did. Look at all these other horrific things we did. Why do you care about this horrible thing that's happening? I don't even understand that logic. It's completely ridiculous. Look, there is no person in good conscience who should be comfortable with the amount of death that's happening in Gaza. And yes, if you are going to correlate it to Dresden, that would be a fair comparison, except much more has been dropped on Gaza than was dropped in Dresden. So is it fair to call what's happening in Gaza a Holocaust? Is that what we're looking after when you have this nonstop onslaught? And it's completely ridiculous to say, oh, well, this is happening because of Hamas. Let's be very clear. It is happening because the Israeli government will not stop bombing them, okay? So you had a very sympathetic audience all around the world, myself included, when October 7th happened. There was not a single person that should or could justify the terrorist acts that was enacted by Hamas. But the collective punishment that is being assigned to the Gazans, the Palestinians living in Gaza, is also unacceptable. And the entire world should condemn it, and it should be made to stop. And I do believe that a radical fringe has taken hold of Israel. And further evidence of that, by the way, is that we are not even allowed to critique Israel without having people like Rabbi Shmuley, which I never said he threatened to murder me, but he has threatened me for 2 years, essentially trying to bully people into their belief that they have a right.
You never said that I threatened to murder you? We're going to post every
No, I never said that you threatened to murder me. Don't cut me off. I did not cut you off.
Okay, I will not cut you off. Go ahead, please.
I did not cut you off, okay?
Go ahead.
The point is that now what's happening across America is that you have Zionist organizations that are threatening and bullying people because people are taking a stance against this act against humanity. What they're doing is inhumane in Palestine. And so what they're doing is they're saying this person should get fired. This person should lose their job. The Zionist Federation of Australia just asked for me to have my visa banned simply because I don't support what Israel is doing. And if that is what I have to pay, if ultimately what happens, I get my visa banned because Zionism has a lot of money in media, then so be it. It's less of a price than the children in Gaza are paying right now. And as a Christian, I will never support what Bibi Netanyahu is doing.
Make sure you guys like, subscribe, send us a comment, and let us know what you think about the facts here on Facts Only.